Yes, all you people way in back, come in close. We want you to be able to hear. So thank you all for coming. I really appreciate you being here with us on this chilly afternoon. I'm very happy to be here introducing a couple of candidates who I know that our neighbors in Bradford should really vote for. Matt Choate for Senate, and of course David Zuckerman for Governor. And I'm going to give each of them a moment to speak. But before I do that, I wanted to answer a question that I've gotten from time to time. I have a set of signs that are yellow and black, and they say firefighters for Sarah. And so some people have been like, what's the deal with that? Why do you have those signs? And I wanted to take a moment to tell the reason why the firefighters have given me their endorsement. And that is because back in 2017, the firefighters came to me as a veteran legislator, and they said, we have a problem in Vermont in that when our firefighters get injured on the job, if it's a physical injury, they can get that injury taken care of. If it's a burn or a sprain or a break, of course, your workers' comp is going to take care of that injury. But they said the problem is when our firefighters and our police and our EMT have a post-traumatic stress injury on the job, all we get is a stiff arm. We don't get coverage. We can't get counseling. We are losing good, trained, professional first responders year after year after year because they can't recover from the stress and the trauma of the job. And these people are the heroes in our community. You know, they're the people who show up for us on our worst day. And so it only made sense to me that we ought to change the law, and we ought to make sure that if you have a broken leg because you were responding to somebody's house fire, that would be treated the same as if you have trauma because you responded to a car accident and the victim reminded you of your 4-year-old child. And so we passed PTSD coverage for first responders in Vermont 3 years ago. Unfortunately, under the Scott administration and with the powers that be, it's been a little bit difficult to enforce that coverage, and so we're going to have to continue to work at it. But I really believe that if we want to have people like that who are there to respond to us and our needs on our worst day, that we need to be there for them to help them heal after the fact. And so I am thankful for our firefighters. I'm thankful for their support, and that's why I have a few of these yellow and black signs that are plucked around town just because the firefighters have given me their thumbs up. So thank you all for coming today. I'm really excited to be here. We've done a whole series of these events with candidates from around the region and around the state, and I am proud today to have Senate candidate Matt Choate and gubernatorial candidate David Zuckerman. So I'm going to give the microphone to Matt and let him speak for a moment, and then he can hand it off to David.
Thanks, Sarah, and thanks for everybody who's out here today. What a great crowd. You're the best one yet. Thanks for being here, and thanks for it to be raining again today, because I think every time I've been here it's been raining, which is awesome. So my name is Matt Choate. I am a candidate for State Senate, Caledonia, Orange County. I did serve this county once before, 2009 and 10, and I thank Orange County very much because the 6 towns in Orange County really helped propel me to that victory that year. So always a special place in my heart down here. That's right. I grew up in Barnet, Vermont. I'm a lifelong resident of the area. I live in Danville now, and by trade, I am a registered nurse. And what got me to run again this time, after my 10-year hiatus, was leading our healthcare organization through the COVID-19 pandemic thus far. And not only did I get to see firsthand the medical implications of this pandemic, as certainly we had to ready our hospital for the response, and we've taken care of a lot of patients since March, obviously, when this began. But I've also gotten to see firsthand how our safety nets worked or didn't work so well for a lot of people in this community and across the state, including many of our own employees at our hospital. who had to make really tough choices about whether to work or take care of family, whether to work or take care of their children who no longer were going to school or had childcare or had any number of other issues. How many people struggled with their health care coverage and being able to access care during a pandemic, which seems crazy to me. Of course you should be able to access that care. And so I thought, perhaps through my experience there and my past experience as a legislator, I would have something to offer as we start to think about recovery, although recovery that's been somewhat complicated right now by this surge that's happening. So we are definitely not out of the woods yet. The next couple of budget cycles in our state government are going to be really challenging to do. Now, I served in 2009, which, if you remember, we had sort of a fiscal problem in 2007 and 8, right? So I had to work in the Senate when we were faced with very tough choices coming out of the financial collapse that happened in 2007 and 8. This is a little bit different coming out of COVID into recovery, but no less challenging on our resources. The 2021 fiscal budget that's in place right now was patched together largely with surplus revenue that came the year before. That's not going to be there next year as we start to put together the budget. There's going to be a significant fall of revenue, I'm certain of that. And so I want to make sure that people are well represented and have legislators that are very careful and very thoughtful about how we construct that budget using scant resources. We have to take care of our most vulnerable people. I almost said patients, I'm a nurse. Our most vulnerable citizens, our senior citizens, our folks with disabilities, our folks who are economically disadvantaged. We have to be able to take care of those folks. But we also have to make smart investments for our future. We are going to get through COVID eventually, and we want to make sure that we're investing for growth in Vermont, investing in housing, investing in workforce development, investing in our state colleges and a pathway to a career for people, protecting people's health care, especially during this pandemic we find ourselves in. And I will work on all of those things. I will pledge myself to listen to all of my constituents. I prided myself on that when I was in office before. And I will make those careful decisions with some compassion and some thoughtfulness. And on that basis, I ask for your vote next week. No, not quite next week. A little more than next week, on November 3rd. Or between now and November 3rd would be great as well. And thank you very much. And I'll be here if you have questions, and I can answer any questions afterwards. And with that, I will welcome to the stage our next governor, David Zuckerman. Welcome.
I really appreciate it. And Sarah, thank you for hosting and putting this together in your wonderful district. And Matt, for being here, and you're going to win this district. And to everyone for being here, I really appreciate the opportunity to speak with you, speak to everybody who's also going to see this on online, social media, and so forth. You know, we are in the midst of the election. It's already happening. We've probably had about half of the potential voters having voted. Today, we know as of yesterday, 170,000+ people have voted. That's more than half the people that voted in the presidential election 4 years ago. And we are probably going to have 20 or 30,000 more people vote today, because you got to put your ballot in the mail on this Saturday. Otherwise, bring it to your town clerk any day this week, or bring it to the post to your actual voting polling place on Tuesday the 3rd. But you've got a very serious decision to make in front of you. We know many of us are working both in the state and nationwide to put our future back on track, to bring respect back to democracy, to bring discourse and difference of opinion into welcome conversations. And we also have to discuss, what is the future that we want to have? How are we going to rebuild the economy and the opportunities for our kids? As Rich and Sarah, Matt, I actually had a summer camp counselor named Rich Choate. So I will always call you Rich, even though you're Matthew. Matt and Sarah are speaking about. And we really need to look at the actions of the past to project what is going to happen in the future. We have a governor who I have a lot of respect for, who I think has listened to Dr. Levine, as any respectful governor should, to guide us through this state's pandemic. I have made it very clear that as governor, I will keep Dr. Levine on. I will continue to listen to his expertise. as we work our way through the remainder of the pandemic. However, when it comes to science and listening to science, the governor vetoed the Global Warming Solutions Act. When it comes to the science and listening to science, the governor vetoed a bill that would hold toxic polluters accountable for the medical monitoring of people who were unwittingly impacted, whether it's through their drinking water or the air we breathe or the water we drink. That those chemical companies should be held accountable for medical testing so that we can help those folks in diagnosing any potential ramification as early as possible so that we can keep them as healthy as long as possible. This governor vetoed minimum wage bills twice. Now let's think about that. What would be different today had he not vetoed the first minimum wage bill? Our essential workers who are put their lives on the line, stocking grocery shelves, serving you at the gas station, and so forth, their wage today would be $1 more an hour. That's $2,000 more a year that they would have in their pocket. We have 60,000 minimum wage workers in Vermont. That means between $100 and $120 million would be circulating in your local economy today that are not circulating in your local economy because the governor vetoed that bill and they don't have the added resources as many other essential workers got to pay their bills and to compensate them for putting their lives on the line for us when we knew so much less about this illness. This governor vetoed paid family leave. Now, paid family leave would have been there for those families that had to choose between caring for their loved ones or staying home to make sure a loved one could have food if they were a vulnerable person during this COVID pandemic. And instead, they went onto the unemployment system, which got overwhelmed with the number of people applying. If we had paid family leave, that many thousands more people would have had a system to slide right into. That's the difference between this governor and myself. Those bills would have been in law. Our working class Vermonters would have been much better off going into this pandemic and going through this pandemic with me as governor. Now, going forward, there are more issues to deal with. We have the climate crisis. We have rebuilding our rural economy that's been struggling for years because the investments haven't been made. I'm a farmer. I know well how hard it is every day to make ends meet as a small business and to try to help my workers be as efficient as possible so that we have the income to pay them to do the work. So I get those struggles. And as a farmer, I get the struggles that face farmers all across the state. I'm not in dairy, but I understand the struggles dairies are facing in meeting your costs versus your income. We need to be investing in an agriculture system that pays our farmers enough, partly through covering externalities like more cover crops and carbon sequestration, which not only will help our farmers have a better economic circumstance, but will help us tackle the climate crisis. We know that the plants can take the carbon in and put it in the soil so that we tackle climate crisis. We know that if we invest in weatherizing working people's homes and fixed income seniors' homes, then they will save money immediately, which is then money that's going to go in the local economy rather than to oil costs overseas. And that money not only will circulate locally, but it'll also pay local people to work immediately weatherizing homes. And of course, it's going to lower carbon emissions. We could pay people immediately to start stringing broadband into our rural areas, which is not only important for economic development, telemedicine, and education. As we now know, 70,000 Vermonters have inadequate broadband, many of them kids who are struggling through school right now through remote learning, and their teachers through remote teaching. But stringing up broadband will build better paying jobs in our rural areas, with jobs connected to Boston, New York, Albany, Montreal. Remote work is a way to bring good paying jobs to our rural areas, and it's a way to reduce our carbon emissions. We know that transportation is one of the biggest carbon emitters in our state. So if people could telecommute 1 or 2 days a week and work in person, 3 days a week, we could reduce our commuting emissions by 20 or 40% with broadband, way more than the very minute electric vehicle incentives that this governor put into play that then he cut in this last budget. So we have to be thinking about handling the issues of the present while also building for the economic opportunity of the future for our kids, for ourselves, and for our state. And I want to say one more thing about our kids. Just up the road, somewhat just up the road, is NVU Linden. Just across, we have VTC, and we have Johnson. All three of those state college campuses were threatened to be closed right at the beginning of the COVID pandemic. Our current governor shrugged his shoulders and said, this may be one of the consequences of the COVID pandemic. Now, to me, that's not leadership. That's not saying these state colleges are critical to the hope and opportunity of Vermont students and young people graduating high school. These state college campuses are critical to the economic well-being of regions of the state that don't have a lot of good-paying jobs. We know how critical these state colleges are. We must find a way to support them through the pandemic and through the transition as we figure out how to really focus their programs, as well as create better marketing opportunities, because frankly, with COVID, it's a marketing opportunity for these state colleges. If you're a young person in this country thinking about where to go to college next year, do you want to go to a big urban center, or do you want to go to a remote campus, not virtually remote, but geographically remote campus, where if you quarantined everybody for 2 weeks, you could have safety in the community and safety for the students, and build the student base to help also build revenues for our state colleges. We have incredible opportunities. We have to find those little silver linings and take advantage of them. That's what vision and creativity is about, and that's what I will bring to the governor's office as your governor, starting in January and planning the budget in November as soon as I'm elected on November 3rd. So I'm asking for your vote. I'm asking for your vision. And I just want to say there's a lot of ways to thank this governor. It doesn't have to be with a vote. We can thank the governor with phone calls. You can thank the governor with letters and cards. And many people thank folks with chocolates or flowers. Whatever you want to do is fine, but it doesn't mean you have to vote for them, because our votes have consequences. Our votes have consequences for the future, for our families, for our kids, for our farms, for our rural economy. And that's the choice you're making going forward here. So I ask you for that vote. And I have one more last thing, I'm so sorry. Just now, or just yesterday, news broke that Senator Sanders may be being considered for the Secretary of Labor position in the Biden administration. I happen to be pretty excited about that. But the opportunity for him to be appointed to that position with confidence that the U.S. Senate would not somehow fall back into the hands of Mitch McConnell, who has destroyed our democracy and our institutions. That opportunity will not exist if it's a tied Senate and Phil Scott is governor. Because while there are words that say he will appoint an independent, and in a debate 3 weeks ago, he made no commitment to that independent being someone who would make sure to caucus with the Democrats. Curiously, yesterday, he did make that commitment because he realizes how important that is. But there is no way of truly knowing when you appoint somebody what they are going to do. And the governor, when he's appointed past independents, they've been quite a bit more conservative and have often voted not on the Democrat and progressive side of the votes on the key important issues. So this vote has serious, serious consequences, potentially for the U.S. Senate. We already know that he's appointed people to the Public Utilities Commission that have pushed us backwards in renewable energy, where we now have 500 fewer jobs in all across rural Vermont in renewable energy work. These are the consequences of your vote. So thank him in another way, and please cast your vote for David Zuckerman, for Molly Gray for Lieutenant Governor, for Matt Choate, not Rich Choate, Matt Choate for Senate, and for Sarah Copeland Hanzas for State House here in Bradford and Fairleigh. Thank you.
Excellent. So let's all go out onto the little sidewalk island out there and do some waving for a few minutes. And I'm sure David can mingle with the crowd and answer any other questions that you have for him. So thank you all for coming.
Thanks, everybody.